People say the cruelest things when they believe you're beneath them. I learned that all over again the moment Amanda tapped her glass at the center of the Christmas banquet hall and smiled like she was about to present a joke. "This is the fat pig our family has to put up with," she announced, lifting her hand toward me. The entire room erupted. Some guests covered their mouths to hide their laughter. Others didn't bother. Evan went rigid beside me. Charles looked amused. Linda whispered something that made her shoulders shake. I didn't move. I didn't drop my fork. I simply looked at Amanda and waited. Then a man at the head table turned around. Mr. Hayes, her new boss. His smile vanished the second he saw my face. "Ma'am, wait, are you the one who acquired Carter and Miles Technologies last year?" The room froze. Amanda stopped breathing. I've spent most of my life perfecting one skill that people underestimate, the art of being ordinary on purpose. After my husband Nathan passed away 7 years ago, I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the quieter side of town. Nothing fancy, nothing that would draw attention. Just the kind of place where an older widow could disappear in plain sight. My days were simple. Coffee at 6, a walk around the block, groceries from the same market where the cashiers called me sweetheart. I drove a reliable sedan that never turned heads and wore clothes that blended into every room I walked into. Evan visited me twice a week. My son has always been gentle, always trying to do the right thing. He'd sit at my small kitchen table, updating me about work, or asking if I needed help with my bills. "Are you sure you're managing everything okay, Mom?" he'd ask. I'd smile every time. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I know how to stretch a dollar." Amanda, on the other hand, never missed a chance to remind me of what she thought my life looked like. "Evan worries about you," she'd say. "I just want to make sure you're not struggling." Her tone always lingered on that last word, as if she enjoyed it. She saw me as harmless, small, and easy to overlook, and I let her. People reveal more when they think you're no one important. But that night at the Christmas dinner changed everything. Amanda's insult didn't sting the way she hoped. I'd endured worse from smarter people. What unsettled me wasn't her words. It was Mr. Hayes recognizing me in front of everyone. Years of careful privacy, years of blending into the background, cracked open in a single moment. As I sat in my apartment the next morning, folding laundry and thinking about the night before, I felt something shift. I had spent so long choosing silence, but silence wasn't going to be an option anymore. Tonight, I realized, everything would begin to unravel. The moment Mr. Hayes said those words, the banquet hall shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of silence that spread slowly, like everyone in the room suddenly remembered how to breathe at the same time. Amanda blinked fast, as if she could force his question away. Wait, what are you talking about?" she stammered. But Mr. Hayes wasn't looking at her anymore. His attention was locked on me. "Ma'am," he said, leaning forward, "you were in Chicago last year. Carter and Miles Technologies. You sat on the left side of the conference table. You wore a navy suit, and you barely spoke." His voice grew more certain. "You were one of the acquisition partners." Forks dropped. Someone inhaled sharply behind us. Linda's hand flew to her chest. "Hold on. What is he saying?" Charles narrowed his eyes, studying me like he was searching for a memory he couldn't quite place. You were there? At that meeting?" Amanda whipped toward her parents. "You're kidding, right? She can't be—" But her voice cracked before she finished the sentence. I stayed calm. I didn't need to confirm or deny anything. Sometimes silence is more powerful than an admission. Mr. Hayes straightened in his chair, his expression shifting from confusion to respect. "If I'm right," he said quietly, "my best employee's mother-in-law owns the company she works for." The room went from silent to breathless. Evan finally found his voice. "Mom, what is he talking about?" His tone wasn't angry. It was stunned, like he'd just discovered a new country with my name on it. I looked at him gently. "We'll talk later." Amanda shook her head, her confidence slipping like water through her fingers. "That doesn't make sense," she snapped. She lives in a tiny apartment. She buys her clothes at discount stores." Linda added, "She asked us if the wine was too expensive." Charles muttered, "Impossible." And to them, wealth meant loud cars, loud jewelry, loud everything. They couldn't understand money that didn't need an audience. Mr. Hayes glanced between us. "I remember her because she was the only person in the room who didn't try to impress anyone." He offered a small smile. "Funny how the quiet ones often have the most power." Amanda's face drained of color. Her laugh was thin, desperate. "She's lying. She's tricking you. She's just—" "Amanda," her father interrupted, voice low, "stop talking." For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The Christmas lights reflected off the glasses, casting sharp little glimmers across the table, as if the room itself was waiting for my reaction. But I didn't give them one. Some truths are better when they speak for themselves. People assumed my quiet life came from lack of opportunity. The truth was the opposite. Everything began long before Amanda ever joined our family, before Evan even finished college, back when Nathan and I were just two engineers trying to solve a problem no one else cared about. In 2013, Nathan sat at our kitchen table surrounded by sketches, wires, and half-assembled prototypes. "It's not complicated," he told me one night, rubbing his tired eyes. "Phones waste more power than they use. If we fix that, we fix everything." I believed him. I always did. 6 months later, he created a small, energy-saving chip that doubled battery efficiency. It wasn't flashy, but it changed the entire industry. Companies fought to license it before the patent was even approved. When we finally sold it, the deposit notification felt unreal. 18 million, Nathan whispered, his voice catching. "We actually did it." We didn't buy flashy cars or move into a mansion. We paid off the house. We invested. Slow, steady, thoughtful. Nathan had a gift for seeing paths no one else noticed. "Money grows when you respect it," he'd say, "not when you show it off." A few years later, cancer took him from me. I held his hand in the hospital as he made me promise two things: protect Evan and protect the future we built. By the time Nathan passed, that 18 million had multiplied far beyond anything Evan ever imagined. I didn't tell him. How could I? He was grieving, building a life, trying to stand on his own. He didn't need to carry the weight of a fortune he hadn't earned yet. So I kept it quiet. I stayed in our modest house until it felt too empty, then moved into a small apartment. I drove the same sedan Nathan used to fix in our garage. I wore the same silver brooch he gave me on our 10th anniversary. And I let the world assume I was just another widow living carefully. Meanwhile, every year our investments grew: stocks, real estate, early tech companies with brilliant founders. Nathan taught me well, and I honored him with every decision. By 2020, the portfolio passed 700 million. I didn't celebrate. I just whispered, "We did it, Nathan," and kept going. That same year, I came across a struggling business in Chicago, Carter and Miles Technologies. Solid infrastructure, talented employees, terrible leadership. Charles Carter had buried the company under reckless loans and expensive expansions. On paper, it looked hopeless. In reality, it simply needed a steady hand. Through a private shell company, I bought it quietly, cleanly, efficiently. Charles never bothered to look past the signatures. He assumed the buyer was another corporate fund stepping in to rescue the business he nearly destroyed. He never knew the buyer was the woman his daughter would later mock at a Christmas dinner. I turned the company around within 18 months. The employees thrived, the debt stabilized, the board was relieved. Charles was praised for finding the right buyer, and he played along, pretending it had been his strategic plan all along. I didn't mind. I wasn't chasing public credit. I was building something Nathan would be proud of. For years, no one connected me to anything. Not the silent acquisitions, not the investments, not the rising value of our portfolio. I learned to navigate rooms where wealthy men ignored me, assuming I was someone's assistant or spouse. I let them underestimate me. It was a useful cloak. But sitting at that Christmas table, watching Amanda laugh at her own cruel joke, my entire hidden world brushed the surface. Not because I revealed it, Because Mr. Hayes recognized me. And for the first time in a long time, I realized the life I'd built in the shadows wasn't going to stay hidden forever. People often pretend kindness when what they really want is information. I realized that the moment Amanda texted me the next morning. Lunch? We need to talk. No apology. No explanation. Just a meeting request typed like a business memo from someone who believed she was in control. Evan drove us to the restaurant she chose, an upscale place with marble floors, gold-trimmed menus, and a chandelier so bright it felt like judgment. He kept glancing at me as he parked, searching for clues about what had happened at the Christmas dinner. But I gave him none. Sometimes the best protection is silence. Amanda was already there, seated at a corner booth with a perfect view of the room. Her hair was flawless, her makeup sharp enough to cut glass. And on the table in front of her was a Bordeaux that cost more than my entire grocery budget for a month, at least the budget she thought I had. She stood up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nora, Evan, I'm so glad you could make it." Evan hugged her, but she barely looked at him. All her attention was on me, like a hunter studying movement in the grass. "We're celebrating," she announced, lifting the bottle. "A new beginning for the family." I took my seat slowly. "Is that so?" "Of course," she replied, pouring herself a full glass. "After last night, I realized how important it is for us to be transparent." Transparent. A word people use when they want access to something that isn't theirs. A server approached, and Amanda waved him away mid-sentence, signaling that she didn't intend to be interrupted. Evan shifted uncomfortably, aware that something unseen was unfolding between us. "Before we order," she continued, "I want to talk about the meeting in Chicago." I raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" She leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was unveiling state secrets. "My father remembers seeing a woman there, a woman who looked a lot like you." Evan's fork froze midway to his plate. "Amanda, stop. That's ridiculous." "Oh, is it?" She tapped her phone, turning the screen toward us. A grainy image from 3 years ago appeared. A conference table, men in suits, lawyers, papers, and a woman in a navy blue dress sitting quietly at the end, my face half concealed. "She was quiet," Amanda continued. "Elegant, reserved, didn't say much, but she held the pen during the final signatures." Her smile sharpened. "That woman looks just like you, Nora." Evan looked from the photo to me, then back to the photo. Confusion, disbelief, and something like hurt began forming in his expression. I didn't rush to respond. "Pictures can be misleading," I said calmly. "But coincidences," Amanda countered, "are rarely that perfect." She reached into her bag again and pulled out several printed pages this time. "Last night, I spoke with Daddy. He remembered details, enough that I started doing some research." Evan frowned. "Amanda, what research?" She ignored him. "I checked acquisition records, shell companies, cross-referenced signatures, and I found something interesting." She slid a document across the table. "NW Holdings, a private entity, registered the same year the company was purchased." Evan blinked. "NW, Mom. That's your initials." Amanda clasped her hands together, triumphant, as if she'd solved a mystery no one asked her to investigate. "Exactly. And that's what started making me wonder." I looked at her without reacting. I wanted her to reveal her entire hand before showing mine. "Amanda," I said, "what exactly are you trying to say?" "I'm saying," she replied lightly, "that you and I should stop pretending around each other. If you're involved in major business deals, I deserve to know. After all, we're family now." Evan's face reddened. "Amanda, this is insane. You're accusing my mom of what? Being a secret investor?" "Oh, Evan," she sighed. "I'm not accusing. I'm asking questions, because I want to know what kind of future we're building." She held my gaze. "And what resources we have access to." There it was. The real motive, not curiosity, not concern, opportunity. I placed my napkin neatly beside my plate. "You've been very busy," I told her. She smiled proudly. "I'm thorough. Wharton didn't teach us to ignore possibilities." "And what possibility do you think you've discovered?" "That you bought my father's company," she breathed. "That you're wealthier than you let on. That you've been hiding it." She leaned forward. "And I think you owe us honesty." "Oh?" I repeated softly. She nodded. "Evan and I need to plan our future. If there's family wealth, it needs to be structured properly." Evan paled. "Amanda, stop talking. This is humiliating." For the first time, her calm slipped. "Humiliating? Evan, we have a right to know what we're dealing with. Don't you want our future children to—" "Children?" He cut her off. "Are you serious right now?" She didn't even flinch. "Yes, and I want them to have the advantages they deserve." Her eyes slid to me. "And it starts with you being honest." I folded my hands. "And what if you're wrong?" She shrugged. "Then you'll clear it up. And if you're right, well, then we start making decisions together." Evan stared at her as though seeing a stranger. "This isn't a partnership," he said quietly. "You're interrogating my mother." Amanda's jaw tightened. "I'm protecting our interests. Something you should be doing too." I had heard enough. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it on the table. Amanda eyed it warily. "What's that?" "Something for you," I replied, "since you like research." Inside were 3 clean sheets of paper. Blank. Her face twisted. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No," I said calmly. "It's a reminder." "Of what?" "That you know far less than you think." For the first time, Amanda looked genuinely unsure. I stood. "I think we're done here." Evan rose immediately, but Amanda stayed seated, gripping the edge of the table. "This isn't over," she warned. "No," I agreed softly. "It's only beginning." As Evan and I walked toward the door, I didn't look back. If Amanda wanted war, she had just declared it. People rarely understand what it costs to stay quiet. They think silence means weakness, but silence is preparation. And after that lunch with Amanda, I knew preparation was no longer optional. It was necessary. The next morning, I drove downtown to meet the only person who had ever understood the way I manage my life, Martin Cole. He had been Nathan's closest friend and later became my financial advisor, the one man who never asked why I preferred privacy over recognition. He simply respected it. His office was on the 18th floor of a glass tower, the kind of building where every footstep echoes. When I walked in, Martin was already standing by the window, glasses in hand, studying the city's morning traffic. "You're early," he greeted me, motioning to the chair across from his desk. "You always know when I'm in trouble," I replied. He sat, folded his hands, and watched me carefully. "I heard you had an eventful Christmas." I almost smiled. Eventful is one way to put it. He nodded once, then tapped a folder on his desk. "I took the liberty of running a few checks after you texted last night. You were right to be concerned." My stomach tightened. "Tell me." He opened the folder. Inside were several printouts, financial inquiries, surveillance logs, credit pulls, all pointing in one direction. "Amanda has been digging," he said plainly. "Hard." I didn't respond, waiting for the details. She hired a private investigation service, Aguilar Research Group. They specialize in corporate ownership tracking. They've already traced the initial layers of NW Holdings. I kept my expression steady, but inside I felt the air shift. NW Holdings was one of my most carefully constructed shell companies, designed to keep my assets unreachable to anyone without legitimate legal authority. "How much does she know?" I asked. "Not enough," Martin said. "But she's determined, and that makes her dangerous." He slid another document toward me. "She also contacted an attorney, Peter Lang. He's known for one thing, building cases around family wealth disputes. If she stays on this path, we could be looking at formal complaints, subpoenas, even regulatory attention." I took a slow breath. "What is she planning?" Martin leaned back, eyes narrowing. Exactly what you'd expect. She thinks you're hiding money and wants leverage, either to force transparency or to gain access to it. Silence settled between us. Finally, he spoke again. Nora, people like Amanda don't stop once they smell opportunity. She's clever, reckless, entitled. That's a dangerous combination. I looked at the documents again, each one tightening the noose she thought she was placing around my neck. She didn't realize she was building her own. What would you advise? I asked. Control the story before she does, Martin said. If she keeps digging, she'll eventually hit something. Your structures are legal, but the wrong narrative can make even clean paperwork look suspicious. He paused, especially if she pushes this to regulators. I met his eyes. You think she would? You underestimate how far she's willing to go, he answered. She's fighting for a lifestyle she grew up with, not one she earned. Her father's downfall left a vacuum, and she intends to fill it, using you. I absorbed every word. It wasn't surprising, but hearing it laid out so clearly sharpened my resolve. I need to protect Evan, I said quietly. Martin nodded. Then we start by understanding everything she's doing, and by preparing your response before she escalates. He opened another file, my asset network, mapped cleanly across multiple companies, trusts, and holdings. You've done everything right, he said. Your privacy structure is solid, but if she pushes for legal discovery, it will drag Evan into a world he's not ready for. That was my greatest fear. Evan had built his life honestly, without knowing the safety net under him. He believed in fairness, goodness, simple effort. He didn't understand the wars that happen behind closed doors, the kind Nathan and I had faced our entire careers. I can take the heat, I said, but Evan can't. And Amanda knows it, Martin warned. I sat back, breathing slowly. So what's the play? He pushed his glasses up. We do what you do best. Prepare. Document everything. Secure your holdings. And create a version of your financial picture that leads her exactly where you want her to go. I arched an eyebrow. A controlled trail? Better, he replied. A mirror. Let her see only what we choose, enough to keep her occupied, not enough to expose anything real. For the first time that morning, I felt a spark of momentum. The same spark I used to feel when Nathan and I solved problems together. She wants to investigate me? I murmured. Then let's give her something to investigate. Martin smiled faintly. That's the spirit. I stood, gathering the files. Thank you, Martin, for always being one step ahead. His expression softened. Nora, you've been 3 steps ahead your entire life. Don't forget that. As I walked toward the elevator, I felt lighter. Not because the problem had shrunk, but because the path forward was clear. Amanda wanted a game. She wanted control. She wanted to force my hand, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut in front of me. My reflection in the polished metal was calm, steady, unshaken. If she's looking for leverage, I whispered to myself, I'll make sure she finds exactly what I want her to see. And with that, the real work began. There's a moment, right after someone crosses a line, when everything inside you settles. Not from fear, but from precision. That was the feeling that carried me through my front door after leaving Martin's office. A quiet that wasn't soft. A quiet that meant calculation. I placed my keys on the counter, poured a small glass of wine, and walked straight into my study. The room wasn't fancy, just a lamp, a desk, and the filing cabinet Nathan insisted we buy 20 years ago. But it held the architecture of everything we built. I switched on the lamp. The warm circle of light landed on the documents I kept organized in a way only Nathan and I understood. Risk first, value second, visibility last. It was the system that protected our entire life. I opened the first drawer, pulled out a thick folder, and placed it on the desk. Acquisition papers, contract summaries, clean audits, nothing sloppy, nothing that could be twisted. Next came investment binders, energy portfolios, stock histories, real estate evaluations. Each page reinforced the same truth. Amanda wasn't peeling back chaos. She was peeling back the most disciplined financial life she had ever encountered. I took a slow sip of wine. "People like Amanda always assume they're the smartest person in the room," I murmured. "I love proving them wrong." My laptop hummed awake. Within seconds, I found traces of her digital footprints, searches she probably assumed were invisible, investigator invoices, legal consultations, corporate asset queries, credit line expansions, reckless, loud, amateur. The more she dug, the more she revealed about her own desperation. I reached for a red notebook and began listing her actions one by one, not with emotion, with strategy. Private investigators. Estate disputes attorneys' credit lines, corporate records, asset phishing, her parents' debt structure, her attempt at leverage. She wasn't exploring possibilities, she was cornering herself. Amanda wasn't planning for a conversation. She was planning for a takeover. She wanted my money, my control, and a future she didn't earn, and she assumed I would panic. A soft laugh escaped me. She picked the wrong woman. I opened an encrypted folder where Nathan and I stored curated financial summaries. Not the real maps. The sanitized versions. Technically accurate on paper, but strategically incomplete. A decoy path for anyone trying to pry. If Amanda wanted a trail, I would give her one. Carefully arranged, deliberately misleading, fully legal, devastatingly time-consuming. I reorganized the files, rearranged public-facing data points, then scrubbed every vulnerable breadcrumb she might stumble across. All she'd see was a clean, modest set of holdings. Nothing flashy, nothing worth attacking, a dead end. Control through clarity, power through structure. 2 hours passed without my noticing. When I finally pushed my chair back, the desk was layered with documents, hers, mine, ours. Evidence of her intentions, proof of my preparation. Amanda wasn't just ambitious, she was drowning, and she thought grabbing my assets would keep her afloat. I reached for the small silver brooch Nathan bought me on our 10th anniversary. I pinned it to my sweater, feeling the weight settle. It reminded me of who I was when he was alive. Calm, sharp, always 3 steps ahead. Tomorrow, she would see that woman again. My phone buzzed, a message from Evan. "Mom, can we come by tomorrow night?" "Amanda wants a conversation." Of course she did. I typed back a simple reply. "I'll be home." I set the phone down and inhaled slowly. Evan still thought his marriage was built on love. He didn't know it had been built on strategy. On his wife's belief that she could climb her way into the life she wanted using my silence as a stepping stone. He would learn the truth soon, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I wasn't going to let him become collateral damage in his wife's ambition. Tonight was for preparing the facts. Tomorrow was for delivering them. I cleaned the desk, slid the folders into a neat stack, and placed them inside my bag. Then I powered down the laptop and switched off the lamp. The room fell back into shadow, but something inside me sharpened. The part of me that built an empire quietly. The part of me that survived losing Nathan. The part of me no one had seen in years. She was fully awake now. I lifted my glass toward the dark window. "To clarity," I whispered, "and to teaching her a lesson she won't forget." It wasn't anger driving me. It was purpose. It was precision. It was the determination to make sure that tomorrow's conversation wouldn't be a negotiation. It would be a revelation. I finished the last sip of wine, set the glass down gently, and walked to my bedroom with a mind finally free of hesitation. Amanda thought she was preparing for victory. She didn't know I had already moved the board. Tomorrow I intended to win. I didn't sleep the night before they came over. I spent hours at my table reviewing files, receipts, and the investigation I had already started on the Carters. By the time the doorbell rang, every document I needed was neatly stacked inside a plain folder. I didn't want drama. I wanted clarity. Evan and Amanda stood in the hallway like they were arriving for a negotiation rather than a visit with family. Amanda had on a crisp, white blazer and a confidence that didn't match the trouble she was walking into. "Come in," I told them, stepping aside. My voice stayed calm. Calm made people reveal their intentions faster. Amanda scanned my living room. She always did that, measuring the value of everything she saw. Evan hovered behind her, shoulders tense, eyes darting between us. "We appreciate you meeting with us," Amanda began as she settled onto the couch. "I think we all want the same thing here, stability." I took my seat across from them. "Stability requires honesty. Let's start there." Amanda crossed her legs, trying to look comfortable. "Then let's talk openly. Your sudden presence in my father's past business dealings has raised questions. And after our lunch, I think it's time we discuss how our families move forward together." Typical Amanda. Sound polite, push an agenda, hope no one notices the pressure behind the tone. Evan leaned forward. "Mom, Amanda's trying to fix things. She wants us to work as a team." "Does she?" I placed the folder on the coffee table and kept my hand on it. "Because what I've seen so far looks more like preparation for control." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Control? I'm talking about transparency. If we're family, we should understand our shared finances." "There are no shared finances," I responded. "Not between us, not ever." Amanda's smile tightened. "With all due respect, that's not realistic. Evan and I are married. What you do affects our future. We should be aligned." Aligned, a clever word. Soft enough to sound friendly, sharp enough to imply pressure. "What exactly do you want aligned?" I asked. Amanda didn't hesitate. "For starters, we were thinking about establishing a family foundation, something that protects your assets but also benefits us all." There it was, the real reason she came. Evan rubbed his forehead. "I told her it might be too soon." Amanda raised a hand to silence him. "Evan, please, we talked about this. It makes sense." I watched her carefully. She wasn't nervous. She was rehearsed. "How would this foundation work?" I asked. Amanda brightened. 3 trustees, you, Evan, and me. Equal votes, full transparency. And an initial contribution big enough to make the foundation credible. Something around $50 million. Evan choked. "Amanda." She ignored him. $50 million. From a woman who mocked me at Christmas dinner and called me a fat pig in front of a room full of executives. Instead of reacting, I folded my hands. "Interesting number. Why 50? "Because it signals seriousness," she replied. "And because your wealth, once properly structured, can create long-term opportunity for our future generations." She didn't look at Evan when she said future generations. She looked at my folder, at what she hoped would become hers. "Before we go any further," I told her, "I need clarity on something." "Of course. Do you love my son?" She froze. The question hit harder than anything I could have planned. Evan looked stunned. "Mom?" Amanda forced a breathy little laugh. "What kind of question is that?" "A direct one." Her face stiffened. "I wouldn't have married him if I didn't care." Care, not love. I opened the folder and slid the first document across the table. "Then explain this." Amanda stared at the page. Her confident posture faltered. Evan leaned closer. "What is it?" "It's an invoice," I explained, "from Aguilar Private Investigations. 2 weeks of work, interviews, financial tracking, and corporate ownership research, all paid for with a credit line Amanda opened last month." Evan's head snapped toward her. "You hired investigators?" Amanda's voice cracked. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I told her. "And there's more." I slid the next paper over. Evan picked it up. "A consultation with a law firm? Estate disputes? Amanda, why?" Amanda's composure was collapsing. "I was just trying to understand the situation. Your mom has been hiding something massive. I needed to figure out what it meant for us." "What it meant for you," I corrected her. "Not for him," Amanda shot back. "You're accusing me of things when you're the one who misled everyone. You let my father believe he failed. You let us think you were—" "A modest widow?" I asked. "Living on a pension? Yes. That was intentional and legal." Amanda rose from the couch, pacing. You bought my father's company and hid it. You influenced his career, his income, everything. And now you're investigating me? How is that fair?" Evan stood up as well, torn between us. "Amanda, did you marry me because of her money?" She stopped moving. The silence was brutal. "Evan," she whispered, "you're twisting this. I love you, but I'm also realistic. Financial stability matters. You know that." He stared at her, stricken. I handed him the final document, a transcript of a phone call Amanda had earlier that year. Her voice, crystal clear, talking to a college friend about her plan to find someone from a stable family with good long-term prospects. Evan read it twice. His hands shook. Amanda lunged forward. "That's taken out of context. It's taken from your own words." Amanda glared at me. "You're destroying your own son just to win." "No," I responded quietly. "I'm protecting him." Evan sank back into the chair, eyes empty. "What happens now?" he whispered. "That depends on both of you," I answered. Amanda crossed her arms, defiant again. "You think you can scare me with paperwork? You think you can decide how this marriage goes?" "No," I replied, "but I can decide who has access to my life." For the first time, she didn't have a response. I stood. Tonight wasn't about money. It was about truth. And now you both have it. Evan's voice trembled. "Mom, what do you want me to do?" "You make your own decision," I told him, "but make it with open eyes." Amanda looked between us, suddenly unsure. For once, silence worked in my favor. The confrontation was over, but the consequences had only begun. The morning after the confrontation, my apartment felt too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. Evan hadn't called. Amanda hadn't texted. I didn't expect either of them to. When people run out of excuses, they usually hide. That gave me room to move. I opened my laptop and logged into the system Martin and I used for confidential reviews. I had built enough patience over the years to never rush a counterattack. If Amanda wanted a war, I would deliver one built on precision, not anger. At 8:12 a.m., Martin called. His voice carried the steady confidence I counted on. "Your instincts were right. A complaint landed on the regulator's desk this morning." "From who?" "I can't disclose that officially." "Unofficially?" "It came through a lawyer tied to the Carters, someone with an agenda." I paced to the window. "How serious?" "Serious enough to become a problem if we ignore it, but manageable if we act now." "Then let's act." "You ready for the next step?" "I've been ready since Christmas dinner." The plan formed faster than electricity moving down a wire. First step, isolate every point Amanda thought she could reach. Second, expose her strategy before she could weaponize it. Third, remove her access entirely. By noon, I was seated in Martin's office, a corner space that overlooked the financial district. He slid a folder toward me. "This is the investigation summary on the Carters. You should see this." I opened it, scanning line after line, their estate nearly underwater, their credit lines stretched to the breaking point, Jessica's recent debt tied to her private investigator, and then the most useful detail of all, Robert's consulting position and Paula's social events were both indirectly tied to board approvals from Reynolds Holdings, board approvals controlled by me. Martin watched my reaction. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "I think Amanda forgot one thing," I said. "I control the foundation of everything she believes she can use against me." He nodded. "We also traced the complaint she filed. It's vague and based on suspicion, but regulators take anything submitted during the holidays more seriously. She thinks pressure will make me fold. She doesn't know who she's dealing with." I placed my hand on the stack of documents. "Let's begin." We spent 2 hours drafting a direct but flawless response to the regulatory inquiry. Clean, factual, stripped of emotion. It documented 15 years of legal structures, audits, compliance checks, and clean records. It showed the truth. Every investment had been transparent and every action lawful. "That handles the regulators," Martin said. "Now what about your family situation?" "That requires something different." "Which is?" "Exposure. People like Amanda craved control through secrecy. They thrived on information only they had. The fastest way to dismantle that power was to put light on everything she tried to hide. I returned home and began assembling a second file. This one wasn't for regulators. It was for Evan. The file included the investigator invoices, the credit lines Amanda opened, her consultation with the estate litigation lawyer, the transcript of her "find someone with long-term prospects" call, the analysis of her parents' financial collapse. The fact that most of their income came from positions my company approved, I typed a single note at the front. You deserve to know the full truth before anyone else tries to twist it. When I finished, the doorbell rang. Evan stood in the hallway, shoulders slumped, eyes tired. "Mom, can we talk?" I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked to the living room, rubbing his hands together. "I went back to the apartment last night. Amanda packed a bag and stayed with her parents. She said she needed space. Then she started asking me questions about my future salary, your assets, even what accounts I might inherit one day." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I didn't know anything, and she got angry. Really angry. She said it was irresponsible for me to marry her without knowing the financial opportunities available." His voice cracked. "Mom, did she ever love me?" I sat across from him. "Look at me." He lifted his eyes, and they were full of the same fear I'd seen when he was 10 and thought he'd lost his bike. "Love is built on honesty. What you have with her was built on assumptions. That isn't love. That's strategy." Evan swallowed hard. "What do I do now?" "You start by reading this." I handed him the file. He flipped through it, page after page. The color drained from his face. "She hired people to track you?" "Yes." "She opened credit hoping she'd be wealthy soon?" "Yes." "And she planned legal steps to get access to your assets?" "Correct." He closed the file slowly, as if the weight of it could crush him. "I married someone who viewed me as a bridge to your money." "You married someone who misled you," I replied. "What you do next is up to you." Evan looked toward the door. "I need time." "You have it." After he left, I poured myself a small glass of water, the kind of quiet victory that doesn't feel like one yet. Retaliation wasn't about punishing Amanda. It was about dismantling her reach, piece by piece, until she had nothing left to weaponize. The next day, the Carters made their move. At 9:45 a.m., my phone lit up with an unknown number. I answered. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Mark Jennings, counsel for Jessica Carter. My clients would like to request a formal discussion regarding shared financial responsibilities." "There are no shared responsibilities," I replied, voice steady. "That's precisely what we need to clarify." "Then schedule a meeting. But be aware, the conversation won't go the way your client expects." He hesitated. "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality. And sooner or later, everyone in this situation will have to face it." When the call ended, I stood at the window overlooking the quiet street. Snow fell in slow, steady flakes. A peaceful morning, hiding a storm ready to break. Amanda chose a war she didn't understand. I chose the truth she could never outrun. And now, the real consequences were about to begin. The boardroom was already full when I arrived. Frosted glass walls, a long table of polished steel, and the kind of silence that only appears before someone swings the first punch. The door clicked behind me, cutting off the hallway noise. Every head turned. Amanda sat near the center, posture perfect, hair smooth, lipstick sharp. Her parents flanked her, both wearing the kind of expressions people practice in mirrors before funerals. Across from them was a man in a navy suit, Peter Lang, the attorney she had hired. Evan sat near the corner, shoulders tight, eyes moving between the papers in front of him and the carpet, like he wasn't sure which direction his life was about to fall. Martin motioned to the seat across from Amanda. "Let's begin." I sat, a firm chair, cool, steady. "Good." Peter leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for coming. We intend to resolve this in a civil manner." Amanda folded her hands. "We're all here to find a solution, a reasonable one." I didn't blink. Then talk. Peter cleared his throat. My client has concerns about the lack of transparency surrounding your financial activities. She believes your decisions have directly impacted her family's well-being. Charles shifted in his seat. Our lives changed when you purchased my company without disclosing your identity. We lost stability. We lost planning power. You lost stability, I replied, because the company was collapsing under your management. My involvement saved every person you employed. Amanda leaned forward. You still manipulated us. By making sure hundreds of people kept their jobs? Her jaw tightened. You kept secrets, big ones. Everyone is entitled to privacy. Not when it affects family, she countered. You forfeited the right to speak about family when you investigated me behind my son's back. Evan's head lowered slightly, a quiet sting but true. Peter interjected. Mrs. Whitmore, our goal is not conflict. Our goal is clarity. My client and her parents believe that a structured agreement would allow everyone to move forward peacefully. Martin frowned. Structured agreement? Peter opened a leather folder and slid several documents toward me. We propose the creation of a family trust with shared governance. As a starting point, Mrs. Whitmore would transfer $15 million into the trust. The beneficiaries would include herself, her son, his spouse, soon-to-be ex-spouse, Martin muttered. Peter continued as if he hadn't heard. And any future children. I watched Amanda's face. Too composed, too confident. She believed she had leverage, or she believed I would be afraid of the regulator she had sicked on me. Either way, she miscalculated. Martin lifted the pages and scanned them. His eyebrows rose. You want my client to contribute $15 million to a structure run by the same people who filed complaints against her? Amanda spoke softly but firmly. We just want a fair arrangement. No, I replied. You want control. Silence. Not even the air conditioning dared to hum. Linda cleared her throat. We're not trying to take anything. We just feel... You feel entitled, I interrupted. There's a difference. Charles bristled. My daughter deserves stability after the turmoil you created. I didn't create anything. Your daughter married for financial advantage, and when she realized the truth didn't look the way she imagined, she panicked. Amanda's eyes flashed. That is not true. You hired investigators. You opened credit lines based on a future income you expected to gain through my assets. You consulted with a litigation attorney before you married my son. Her expression faltered, brief but visible. Evan looked at her with a new weight in his eyes. Peter adjusted his tie. Regardless of personal feelings, the trust would protect everyone. It would prevent unilateral decisions, ensure transparency, and provide long-term security. Martin folded the documents. Let me be clear. This proposal gives my client zero control over her own funds while granting equal voting rights to people who attempted to dismantle her reputation. Why would she agree to that? Amanda straightened in her chair. Because it solves everything. We avoid regulators. We avoid legal battles. We stabilize the family financially. Everyone wins. I leaned back slightly, calm, sharp. When you walk into a negotiation, Amanda, you should understand the value of what you're offering. What exactly do you think you bring to this table? Her eyes narrowed. A path forward? No, you bring problems. Debt, risk, a complaint filed out of spite, and a marriage held together by secrets you created. Evan flinched but didn't speak. Peter exhaled. Then what do you propose, Mrs. Whitmore? I looked around the table, at the greedy tension in Amanda's posture, at Charles shifting in discomfort, at Linda clutching her purse, at Peter's calculating expression, at Evan, caught between heartbreak and realization. I placed both hands on the table. $5 million. The room froze. Amanda blinked. Charles leaned back. Linda inhaled sharply. Evan's eyes snapped toward me. Peter frowned. $5 million? Toward the trust? No. Amanda frowned. Then what for? A one-time payment. You take it, you walk away from my son, and you never contact him again. The silence dropped like a stone through water. You're buying her off? Evan's voice cracked slightly. No, I replied calmly. I'm buying peace. Amanda stared at me, stunned. You're offering $5 million for me to divorce your son and disappear? Yes, Linda covered her mouth. That's logical, I cut in. Efficient. Clean. Peter raised his hands slightly. Mrs. Whitmore, that's not an appropriate... Appropriate? I asked. Was it appropriate to file complaints with regulators to pressure me? Was it appropriate to hire investigators? Was it appropriate to lie your way through a marriage and treat my son like an access card to wealth? Amanda's voice shook. You can't force me to leave him. I'm not forcing you. I'm simply showing you your options. Peter opened his briefcase, rifling through papers, trying to regain control. Before we even consider this, we need clarity. If she refuses, what then? Martin leaned forward. If she refuses, we pursue regulatory action against the Carters for misrepresentation. We expose the credit lines, the fraudulent loans, the false statements to financial institutions, and we document every step of their investigation into my client, which will show clear intent to extort. Charles blanched. Extort? Linda whispered. Peter, do something. Peter shook his head. I can't fight evidence. Amanda clenched her fists. You're bluffing. I slid a folder toward her. She opened it. Her face turned gray. Every invoice, every credit line, every recorded call, every document from the investigator, every email tied to the complaint she filed. Her breath hitched. This is what happens, I said quietly, when you play a game without understanding who else is sitting at the table. Amanda's parents looked sick. Evan looked devastated. The attorney closed his briefcase. $5 million is significant. It is also more than my client could ever obtain through litigation. Linda whispered, Take it, Amanda. Charles added, We can pay off the house, clear our debts, start fresh. Evan's voice softened. Is that what you want? Amanda avoided his eyes. He leaned forward. Do you love me, or do you just love what you thought my family had? She looked at him for a long, painful moment. No answer. That silence was louder than any confession. Evan exhaled, broken. I see. Peter spoke gently. Mrs. Whitmore, we need time to think. You have until noon tomorrow, I replied. After that, the offer disappears. Amanda swallowed hard. And if I refuse? I stood. Calm. Absolute. Then you face everything you set in motion, every loan, every investigation, every false step, and you fight me in a place where I've spent 15 years winning. Martin stood behind me. Meeting adjourned. No one moved until I walked through the door. Sometimes power isn't loud, it's just clear. When Evan caught up with me in the hallway, his voice trembled. Mom, did you really just put a price on my marriage? No, sweetheart. I gave you the truth. The price was always there. She just never said it out loud. He looked down. What if she takes the money? Then you know who she was. And if she doesn't, then you still know who she was. His throat tightened. I don't recognize her anymore. That's because you're seeing clearly for the first time. He leaned against the wall. I just want my life back. You'll have it, I told him, one way or another. He nodded slowly, tears he refused to shed pressing behind his eyes. You were right, he whispered, about everything. I didn't celebrate. There's nothing joyful about being right when it breaks your child's heart. Go home, I told him gently. Rest. Tomorrow will give you the answers you need. He walked away, shoulders heavy, and I stepped into the elevator, knowing the real ending was already building. The boardroom showdown ended at 5 p.m. By 9 that night, the news had already reached corners of the Carter family I didn't even know existed. Some storms move slowly, this one moved fast. I spent the evening in my apartment, lights low, the air quiet. I didn't pour wine, I didn't replay the meeting, I just sat still and let everything settle. For the first time in weeks, my mind wasn't racing. It felt like the moment after an earthquake when the dust stops falling and the room becomes recognizable again. At 10:30, my phone buzzed. Evan. Mom, she wants to meet with her lawyer tonight. They're deciding. All right, keep me posted. No anger in his voice anymore, no confusion, just exhaustion, the kind a person gets after the truth burns through every corner of their life. By midnight, I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, sunlight hit my window exactly at 7. I stood in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and watched the city move. People walking their dogs, workers heading out early, a couple jogging like nothing in their world hurt. At 11:47, Martin called. They accepted. I didn't respond. He continued. Papers are being drafted now. They'll sign at 5. Good. No hesitation from them. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. There wouldn't be. You all right? Yes. A small pause. Thank you for everything. You handled it, Nora. I just watched. By late afternoon, the documents were signed. 5 million transferred. Agreement finalized. Amanda was out of our lives, legally and permanently. No contact, no claims, no posturing. Gone. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like breathing again. At 6, Evan knocked on my apartment door. His shoulders were heavy, his eyes tired, but something in him looked clearer than it had in months. He walked in without talking. He went straight to the couch and sat with both hands clasped. I watched him for a moment. Do you want tea? He nodded. When I placed the cup in front of him, he stared at the steam for a long time before opening his mouth. She took the money. I know. No fight, no hesitation, just took it. That was always her path. He looked up. I feel stupid, Mom. I sat across from him. You're not stupid. You loved someone who didn't love you the same way. That's painful, but it's not stupidity. His jaw tightened. Did she ever love me? No. He closed his eyes, but there were no tears, just acceptance. Sometimes acceptance hurts more. When did you know? He asked. The day she introduced me at Christmas dinner. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that moment changed everything. Another silence passed between us, not the heavy kind, just understanding. I wish I had listened earlier, he murmured. You listened now. That's what matters. He leaned back against the couch. It all feels unreal. She was my wife yesterday, now she's gone. I folded my hands. You can grieve the idea of her, but don't grieve the reality. That part wasn't good for you. His voice dropped. It's embarrassing. No, sweetheart. What happened to you is something people deal with every day. They trust the wrong person. They learn, and they grow. There's nothing embarrassing about that. He breathed deeply. You know what hurts the most? What? I never even got the chance to see who I was without all this noise. Everything became about money. Not mine. Yours. Her family's. Reputation. Appearance. It wasn't real. You get that chance now. He let out a long exhale. Yeah, I do. A few minutes passed before he spoke again. I'm moving out of the apartment we shared. I already found a place near the school where I volunteer. It's small, but it feels right. That sounds like a good step. And I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Good. Another pause. This one's softer. You know. He rubbed the back of his neck. After she signed the papers, she told me something. What? She told me I would regret choosing you. My voice stayed steady. Do you? He shook his head. Not for a second. My chest tightened. The good kind. He stood slowly. Thanks for being honest with me. I always will be. He walked toward the door, then turned back. Mom, there's something else. I met someone. A beat. A teacher. Her name's Sarah. I raised an eyebrow. When? About a month ago. At the community center. We barely talked back then, but I don't know. She feels different. Different how? She listens. She doesn't brag. She likes simple things. She doesn't treat life like a competition. She sounds real. She is. And she doesn't know anything about our family's money. I told her you lived in a small apartment and drove a reliable car, and she said it made you sound grounded. I felt my lips shift into a small smile. She already has good judgment. He laughed quietly. I'm not ready for anything serious yet, but I want you to meet her someday. I'd like that. He opened the door. I'm going to take some time. Get my head straight. That's the right thing to do. He hesitated. Are you going to be okay? Yes. Are you? He nodded once. Getting there. When the door closed, the apartment felt bigger than before. Not empty, just open. The kind of open space that comes after a storm pulls everything loose. I walked to my desk, pulled open the drawer, and lifted Nathan's old brooch. Simple silver, slightly scratched. He used to say it reminded him of why we worked so hard. Not for status, for stability, for options, for freedom. I held it for a moment, then placed it on the table. Later that week, Evan called again. His voice sounded lighter this time. I moved into the new place. It has these huge windows that face a park. I didn't realize how much I missed seeing trees. That sounds peaceful. It is. And Sarah helped me paint the living room. Already? She brought coffee. I wasn't going to say no. I smiled again. Sounds like a good influence. She is. There was a pause. Mom, I want to apologize. You don't have to. I do. I doubted you. I blamed you. I let someone else tell me who you were. And you didn't deserve that. You were overwhelmed, and you were hurting. You reacted like any person would. That doesn't excuse it. No, I agreed, but it explains it. Another long silence, this one gentle. I want to rebuild things with you, he said quietly. Not because of everything that happened, because I finally understand what you were trying to protect. I'm here, I replied. Whenever you're ready. I'm ready now. When the call ended, I sat back and let the moment settle. For the first time in a long stretch of chaos, I felt the ground under my feet again. The world wasn't perfect. The hurt wasn't gone. But the direction was right. I stood, grabbed my shawl, and went out for a walk. Evening air, people heading home from work, a child riding a scooter across the sidewalk, an elderly couple sitting on a bench sharing a sandwich. Normal life. Real life. The kind of life I had built everything for. And now, finally, it felt within reach. At the end of the block, I looked up at the fading sky and took a deep breath. The storm had passed. And what remained was the beginning of something better. I moved to Asheville in early spring. The air there felt different from the city. Lighter, cleaner, honest. No one knew me as the woman who ended a corporate war or the mother who offered $5 million to protect her son. I was just Nora, a widow in her early 60s, looking for a quiet place to start the next chapter of her life. The apartment I chose had a small balcony overlooking maple trees. Morning sunlight filtered through the branches and fell across my dining table. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe without checking my phone or waiting for the next crisis. Peace felt unfamiliar, but good. I unpacked slowly, a few books, a framed picture of Nathan, the silver brooch he gave me on our 20th anniversary. Not much else. I didn't want to bring the past with me, just the parts of it that mattered. The first week, I visited the local community college. Nathan always believed in young minds, engineers with ideas but no resources. Before he passed, he told me that the world needed more inventors, not more people chasing status. So I created the Nathan Fund in his honor, a scholarship for students studying engineering, especially those working part-time to stay afloat. The dean welcomed me into his small office. "The students will appreciate this more than you know," he told me. "I hope it gives someone a chance Nathan would have given," I replied. The paperwork took 2 days. Approvals, account transfers, signatures. Nothing complicated. I had spent years mastering complex investments. This felt easy, clean, purposeful. The first student we awarded the scholarship to was a young man named Luis, 20 years old, working nights in a grocery store. Brilliant, shy, polite. He showed up to the small award meeting wearing a shirt that didn't quite fit and shoes scuffed from too many hours on concrete floors. His eyes widened when he read the acceptance letter. "Is this real?" he asked. "Yes," I told him. "It's real." He looked up. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to repay me," I explained. "Just finish your degree. That's enough." He nodded with a mixture of relief and disbelief. When he stepped forward to shake my hand, I noticed his fingers trembling. Not from fear, just from the weight of possibility. As he left the room, he turned back. "I'm going to make sure I earn this. I know you will." That moment stayed with me for days. It reminded me why Nathan and I worked so hard all those years, not for luxury, not for applause, for impact, quiet, real impact. A few weeks later, life built a steady rhythm, morning coffee, evening walks, calls with Evan every Sunday. One Sunday afternoon, Evan's voice carried a new energy. "Mom, we're driving up to see you next weekend." "We?" "Sarah and me." That softened something inside my chest. "I'll make dinner." He laughed. "You don't have to go all out." "I want to." When the weekend arrived, I cooked rosemary chicken and roasted vegetables, the kind of meal Nathan liked. Evan knocked on my door at 6. Standing beside him was Sarah, warm smile, simple clothes, eyes steady and kind. "It's so nice to meet you," she greeted me. "You too. Come in." Dinner felt natural. No forced compliments, no performance, no hidden agendas. Sarah asked about my garden plans. Evan told stories about his students. They enjoyed the food without pretending to be impressed. It felt genuine. After dinner, Evan stepped onto the balcony to take a call. Sarah stayed behind to help me clear the table. She handed me a plate. "He's been through a lot." "I know." He told me everything, not the numbers, just the truth. "And what do you think?" "I think he finally learned the difference between people who stand beside him and people who stand on him." Her words were simple, but honest. I appreciated that. When Evan returned, I handed him a box. "This is for you." He opened it slowly. Inside was Nathan's brooch. "Mom, this is yours." "It's ours, but you carry it now. Let it remind you of who raised you and who believed in you long before money became a conversation." His expression shifted. The same mix of gratitude and understanding he had the day he realized his marriage wasn't built on love. He placed the brooch in his pocket carefully. "Thank you," he murmured. After they left that night, I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and stepped onto the balcony. The air was cool, the sky a deep blue. I watched the lights from passing cars, not with anxiety, with calm. I thought about the Carter family, how quickly greed can collapse into silence. I thought about Amanda, disappearing with $5 million. Maybe she would reinvent herself somewhere else. Maybe she would repeat old cycles. That wasn't my concern anymore. I thought about Evan, the man he was becoming, the peace he found, the way he now asked for nothing except honesty. And I thought about Nathan, the life we built, the choices we made, the future we protected. The next day, I visited the engineering lab on campus. Luis spotted me from across the room and hurried over. "Mrs. Whitmore," he greeted, out of breath. "I wanted to tell you, I got invited to a national competition. My design qualified." "That's incredible." "I couldn't have done any of this without your help." "You did the work," I reminded him. "I just opened the door." He paused, then spoke with quiet conviction. "You changed my life." For a moment the room faded. The noise, the students, the machines. All I heard was Nathan's voice in memory, telling me that knowledge meant nothing unless you passed it on. "Make the most of it," I whispered. "I will." As I walked back to my car, sunlight poured through the trees, warm and steady. I didn't rush. I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't think about the past. The best revenge isn't loud. It isn't destructive. It isn't cruel. The best revenge is building a life so full, so honest, so grounded that the people who tried to break you become nothing more than distant noise. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't running. I was living well. And that was enough. When I look back on everything that happened, I realize one simple truth. Peace is not something you wait for. It's something you choose, one quiet decision at a time. I protected my son. I honored my husband's memory. I built a life that finally felt honest and steady, and in the end, that was enough. If my story reached you today, if it reminded you that you're stronger than the people who tried to tear you down, I'm grateful. Because every time one of us finds our voice again, another mother out there remembers she's not alone. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It means more than you know. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about strength, quiet justice, and starting over, feel free to subscribe and stay with our little community. And if you can, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. I always love reading them. They remind me just how far these stories can travel. Until the next video, take care of yourself, stay kind, stay steady, and never forget, living well is the strongest answer you will ever give. I'll see you soon.